Hi learners! This is the first topic of Unit 3. The topic deals with various variables of research. Here we will be discussing the different types of variables of research and how these variables influence each other in the course of research. The term variable is a term frequently used in research projects. It is pertinent to define and identify the variables while designing quantitative research projects. Variable is a key term of research, and therefore it is critical for beginners in research to have clarity about this term and its related concepts. Variable, to put in layman's statement, is something that can change or can have more than one value. Let's now discuss the meaning of the term variable. A variable, as the name implies, is something that varies. It may be weight, height, anxiety levels, income, body temperature, and so on. Each of these properties varies from one person to another and also has different values along a continuum. It could be demographic, physical, and social, and could also include religion, income, occupation, temperature, humidity, language, food, fashion, etc. Some variables can be quite concrete and clear, such as gender, birth order, types of blood group, etc., while the others can be considerably more abstract and vague. A variable is a property that takes on different values. It is also a logical grouping of attributes. Attributes are characteristics or qualities that describe an object. For example, if gender is a variable, then male and female are the attributes. If residence is the variable, then urban, semi-urban, rural become the attributes. Thus, attributes here describe the residence of an individual. It is pertinent for a researcher to know as to how certain variables within a study are related to each other. It is thus important to define the variables to facilitate accurate explanation of the relationship between variables. Variables can be defined in terms of measurable factors through a process of operationalization. It will convert difficult concepts into easily understandable concepts which then can be measured empirically. There are different types of variables and these have their influences differently in a study. And these include independent, dependent, and confounding variables. Let's now discuss these types of variables in detail. The first is the independent variable. An independent variable is manipulated or selected by the researcher. Manipulation means that the researcher can choose any of the various levels or conditions of the independent variable and impose them on the subjects to observe the differential effects that are produced in the behaviors of the subject groups. An independent variable thus refers to the cause or the one thing that is changed in an experiment. This variable makes one test independent of another test. The second type of variable is the dependent variable. A dependent variable is a characteristic of the subject's behavior which is measured and studied as a result of the manipulation or selection of the independent variable. This is also called the yield, the output, and the criterion variable. Thus, a dependent variable refers to the effect or the result of the experiment. It refers to what is measured and it depends on what you changed. Thus, the independent and the dependent variables represent different axes of a graph. While the independent variable refers to the x-axis on a graph, that is along the bottom, then the dependent variable refers to the y-axis, that is along the vertical side. The independent variable is the antecedent while the dependent variable is the consequent. If the independent variable is an active variable, then we manipulate the values of the variable to study its effect on the other variable. For example, we alter anxiety levels to see if responsiveness to pain reduction medication is enhanced. The anxiety level is the active independent variable. The dependent variable is the variable that is affected by the independent variable. Responsiveness to pain reduction medication is the dependent variable. The dependent variable is also dependent on the independent variables. There are two types of independent variables: treatment and organismic or attribute variables. The treatment variables are those factors that the experimenter manipulates and to which he or she assigns subjects. Attribute variables are those characteristics that cannot be altered by the experimenter. The next type of variables are the confounding variables. Confounding variables can be categorized into two groups: extraneous and intervening. Extraneous variables can be defined as any variable other than the independent variable that could cause a change in the dependent variable. In our study, we might realize that age could play a role in our outcome, as could family history, education of parents or partner, interest in the class topic, or even time of the day, preference for the instructor's teaching style or personality. The list obviously could be quite long, and it must be dealt with in order to increase the probability of reaching valid and reliable results. Now let's talk about intervening variables. In many types of behavioral research, the relationship between the independent and dependent variables is not as simple of one of stimulus to response. Certain variables that cannot be controlled or measured directly may have an important effect on outcome. These modifying variables, referred to as intervening variable, intervene between the cause and the effect. For example, a researcher wants to establish the relationship between the number study hours and the percentage of marks. He may also consider the third variable, that is writing skills, as a mediating variable. Intervening variables like extraneous variables can alter the results of our research. These variables, however, are quite difficult to control. Intervening variables include motivation, tiredness, boredom, or any other factor that arises during the course of research. For example, if one group becomes bored with their role in the research more than the other group, the results may have less to do with our independent variable and more to do with the boredom of our subjects. The intervening variables include any and every variable that may intervene and contaminate the process of eliciting pure responses other than organismic variables. So learners, in this video, we learned about the concept of variable and its various types.